Welcome, fellow Disney Channel babes, whether you're from the nostalgic 90s
or the awkward aughts,
or you're giving Gen Z. We're glad that you're here.
I'm Gabriella.
And I'm Natalie, and this is the podcast where we rave
and sometimes roast
classic Disney Channel original movies.
You're listening to Once Upon a DCOM.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Once Upon a DCOM, the podcast where we take you down memory lane with a rewatch of all of your favorite Disney Channel original movies. My name is Natalie. This is my co-host, Gabby.
Hey.
We are two 90s babies currently making our living in the film and television industry, and we are watching every single Disney Channel original movie. Yes, every single one. And this week, we watched the 1999 film Zenon, Girl of the 21st Century. And Gabby, I found out last week that you have never seen this before.
Which I now know was a crime.
A crime.
I don't know how I missed this trend.
It would have been your entire personality in childhood, I feel like.
It genuinely would have. I told Nick I want to be Zenon for Halloween this year. I was like, I missed my chance in the past. But I actually wear my hair like her sometimes. Like, I am her.
You do. You literally do. Before we dive into our recap, let me set the scene for this movie. So Zenon is a science fiction teen comedy starring Kirsten Storms and a very young Raven-Symoné. I believe she was like 13 when they made this. It was based on a book by the same name, and this movie was originally supposed to be a pilot episode for a potential TV series. That ultimately did not happen, but they ended up making 3 Zenon movies, so I feel like it turned out okay. All right, Gabby, do you want to take it away into our recap?
I would love to take it away. So, Zenon, Girl of the 21st Century, is a young woman somewhat prone to mischief who lives in a space station in the year 2049. And now this confused me when I was first watching it because I had always been under the impression that the whole film was about her going back in time, kind of like Phil of the Future-esque, where she's from the future. But it turns out both the Earth and the space station are in the year 2049, which very much is reminiscent of the 90s, but it's okay.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah. So anyways, she lives in the year 2049 on a space station where her parents are scientists doing a lot of scientific important things. And like I said, she's prone to mischief. So Zenon tends to get herself into some trouble here and there with her friends. They're always in the trash compactor, which is very reminiscent of Star Wars. And one time she gets caught floating out into space when she's not supposed to. And so because of all of this, her parents are very concerned because the scientist funding most of their projects, Parker Wyndham, and his assistant, Mr. Lutz, are coming up to the space station to check on things. And if all goes well, they may or may not give them more money. So it's a big deal. And they make Zenon promise that she will not do anything wrong. And of course, that's not what happens. Not only
that is not what happens at all.
Not even close. Not only is she being mischievous, but she actually catches Mr. Lutz in a somewhat compromising position in a sector of the spaceship he's not supposed to be in. And so, of course, she goes into full-on rogue detective mode and starts analyzing everything and figuring out what he's doing. She gets caught in the act, spying on him in this restricted sector. They don't see him there. They only see her. So she gets in huge, huge trouble, and they decide that they need to ground her, which is hilarious because what they actually mean is they're sending her to Earth. And I tell you what,
ground.
The literal ground. And I tell you what, I was waiting the whole first half of this movie for this. They set it up so many times because I remembered in the trailer, I'm like, she goes to Earth at some point, I think. And anyway, so she gets sent down to Earth to live temporarily with her mother's sister, Aunt Judy, who is afraid of everything, especially space travel. So Zenon is a complete fish out of water on Earth, and she's having some trouble at school with the popular kids and like how to eat food that's processed, you know, your typical everyday problems in America in 2049. And so she eventually does make a few friends, namely Andrew, who is like very techie and computery, and Greg, who stares more than Kristen Stewart in Twilight, and it's very creepy. But they kind of have a crush on each other.
But okay, it is a little, but like he's a little teenage boy and he sees pretty girl, so you gotta give him that.
I mean, It was probably half the movie was him staring at her. So I guess I can give him a pass, but it was a lot. It
That's
was a
fair, but he's a
lot.
little cutie.
Yeah, they're cute. And so they become friends and then eventually maybe more than friends. But back to the space station drama, Xenon is still convinced that this Mr. Lutz guy did something wrong up there, and she's determined to find out what. Meanwhile, up in the space station, her parents are starting to experience some complications that they don't know the cause of. And as the plot develops, we kind of come to learn that, in fact, yes, Mr. Lutz and Parker Wyndham did install some kind of virus into the space shuttle, which will cause it to crash, just like spontaneously combust and like kill everybody up there. And the whole thing hinges on this little disc that the guy had used to carry the virus. And he lost the disc. And wouldn't you know it, Xenon has the disc. Isn't this shocking?
Of course. Of course.
Her best friend, who you mentioned, Raven Simone, had found the disc on the ground, thought it was adorable, made it into an earring. So now Xenon's walking around with like the linchpin of the entire movie. And her friend Andrew, who's really techie, figures this out. And so he is somehow able to make the disc, able to reverse everything on the space shuttle and save the day. But the problem is they don't know how to get to space. And so Xenon has to go on a wacky adventure with her favorite boy band, who I forgot to mention, Microbe, specifically
featuring Protozoa, the main singer.
The main singer, her truest of true loves, even more than Greg. And I kind of forgot to mention this at the beginning, but Xenon had like won a competition to dance with this band because they were supposed to come to space. And so now the time has come for them to go to space for this competition, and she hijacks their trip. Her and her Aunt Judy, they go back up into space, and they are able to, just in the nick of time, guess the correct password and use the microchip that has been reformatted to end the virus. Mr. Wyndham and Mr. Lutz are arrested, and everybody gets to watch the Microbe concert together. And Xenon is even so sweet to let her best friend be the one to go on stage and dance with them. And that...
Boom, boom, boom. Make my heart go zoom, zoom, zoom.
Zoom, zoom. A fantastic song.
Honestly,
and that is Zenon, girl of the 21st century.
Yes, Zenon. Oh, I love her.
I love her too. She's so spunky and fun.
So obviously you didn't see this as a kid, but I want to talk about how I viewed this as a child. I didn't watch this in 1999 because I was 2 years old, but I did watch it when I was young, probably in the 5, 6, 7-year-old range. And I just remember loving how colorful the movie was and wanting her outfits and her hair. And
yes.
Just like how much fun it is. And then that song at the very end, the boom, 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 makes my heart go zoom, 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 was like just a song that was always stuck in my head as a kid. So I saw this 1,000,001 times in my youth. And it has probably been 10 years since I've seen this. Probably more like 15 or 20.
So how do you feel about it now as an adult?
I was a little bit bored, but in the sense that like I thought it moved faster than it did. You kind of mentioned this earlier, but like they set up her being sent to down to Earth like 4 or 5 times. Like there was maybe too much exposition. And I was kind of like, I remember this movie moving so much faster. And it's almost a 2-hour movie, which for the time and for a Disney Channel, like a TV movie, is really long.
Yeah, so I actually was thinking I would have been content with one plotline or the other. Like part of me wanted to see more of the spaceship. Like by the time she finally got her butt down to Earth, I was like, I don't really want to leave space. This is so cool. I have so many questions about like how the spaceship works and what her parents are up there doing, because we don't get a ton of explanation about that. And I just wanted to learn more about space. And I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she doesn't go to Earth, and like that's fine with me. And then the whole Earth thing is like kind of rushed because she gets down there so late in the film. And then they're like immediately just trying to get back to the spaceship. So I would have been happier with like a longer Earth plot, or just cut the Earth plot and have her deal with things in space, you know?
Yeah. I will say you haven't seen the second or third movie, right?
Not yet, but man, do I want to.
Zenon, I won't
the
spoil
sequel.
It yet. Yes, the sequel. And then Z3.
Just brilliant.
I know. I won't spoil anything, but like it's there, you get a little bit more in those ones. So we'll see more of the space station. We'll see more of her Earth plot. There's more to see.
I'm glad to hear that. Okay, good. But I agree. It was really, really long. And if I hadn't known that she eventually goes to Earth from having seen the trailers, I might have not cared. I might have just been like, this is really cool. But I, like, every 5 seconds was like, she's getting sucked down to Earth. It's happening. Like, when she was out of the space shuttle, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to get sucked down. And then when she's in the trash compactor, I was like, this thing's going to empty out and she's going to get sent down to Earth. And it just kept not happening. Like, I was like disappointed.
Yep.
So, first of all, I think we should go back to Greg because he bugged me so much.
What? Oh, I love him.
But he did grow on me. So, at first, I was like, this kid is so creepy when they were at the restaurant and he was just staring at her. But then he said this one line, and I was like, oh, okay, I like him now. It was when he said, I nearly got whiplash from the verbal assault. I was like, oh my gosh, this kid is so snarky. I love him. He's not nearly as cheesy as I thought. And he did grow on me by the end.
Yeah, I feel like I like him so much because in comparison to other DCOM boys that we have seen, other DCOM male love interests, I feel like he is one of the more real representations of a teenage boy who has a crush on a girl, which is why I think it's so funny that you're like, he's really awkward. I'm like, yeah, because he saw a pretty girl and he has no idea what to do. He's like 12 years old.
It's just accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I can give you that. He's very realistic. His friend, however, is not. He's like supersonically smart and
I know only
the technology, actually.
Yeah, only he can like solve this very sophisticated computer virus, and he doesn't speak to a single adult about it. And like, what?
Yeah, that was kind of shocking. So let's actually take a moment to talk about the technology, because that's an even more interesting point than Greg. The technology in this movie, the opening moment when you're seeing her like talk to herself on the thing, I was like, that's just like a Google Home or like an iPad or something.
It's a Siri, but like she did it to herself, you know, like she recorded herself do it.
Right. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. And then also like self-driving cars. And
how did I miss that? Is that on Earth or on the spaceship?
Yeah, on Earth. They drive to go to like the space shuttle and they're like, do you know how to drive? And Andrew's like, I don't have to. I just put in the coordinates.
Oh yeah. It's like GPS, but it takes them there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I missed that.
Yeah, and then they have like they predicted like FaceTime, like they're FaceTiming the whole movie.
For real. Yeah, there was so many things that I was like, this is just like today's technology.
I know. They actually did pretty good. And then also like there's a point where she like tries to pay for lunch and she's like, "Oh, I don't have any cash. Like we don't use cash where I come from." And I was like, she predicted a cashless society.
That's true. What did she say that they use? It was something
they
so
like
weird.
Barter something. I don't know if she was joking or if she was like really meaning that. I don't know though.
I don't know. But if that's the case, that's kind of going backwards actually.
Yeah.
They've like looped around in time. Yep. Well, and it's funny because the costumes and the outfits are very like what you would think of the future from like Tomorrowland from Disney or something. Yeah. Like it's kind of cheesy, like metallic-y looking. Really cute. I love the outfits, but it didn't look like what is the purpose of that in the future? Right. It didn't seem like it had a practical reason, but the technology totally checked with today. Yeah. And it was hilarious to me when they said there hasn't been a band this good since 2025.
I know.
I was like, kill me, that's next year.
I had a visceral reaction. I was like, oh no.
It's ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. So, I mean, it's not even that far off, honestly.
No, it's really not. And that made me like stop and have to think about it. And I was like, that's how old are we going to be in 2049? I will be
fun question.
52 years old.
And you're 2 years younger than me, so I'll be 54.
Wild. We will do a reunion episode of this podcast
in 2049 and just talk about Zenon and what they got right and what they got wrong.
Right. Speaking of that, space stations. People living in space. Not quite yet, but I don't think they're too far off.
No, but I do feel like there was so much inspiration for the space station from Star Wars. Like with the trash compactor and the whole setup of the ship kind of looks like the opening scene in A New Hope.
That is true. I will say, like, I feel like I want to read the book just to see how much creative license was taken, like, by Disney and how much, like, the author put in the book. I wonder. I'm looking it up right now. It was published in 1996. Here's what it says. Zenon, who lives in outer space on a space station, is sent to Earth to visit her grandparents for the summer, a trip that, at first, she finds to be completely boring, but when her grandparents' dog has puppies, Xenon's opinion of the planet makes a change for the better.
That's
So
very
I'm
different.
gonna go with it has absolutely nothing to do with the movie.
They were like, girl in space goes to Earth. Just taking that.
Done. That's it.
Right. I loved how they talked about Earth because I was just like, yup, it's hard to live here. They're like, I haven't even sneezed. And then, like, when she gets down there, all she does is sneeze for the first 5 minutes. And I was like, it's so true.
And her, like, walking up the bridge and she's like, gravity is so painful.
I loved how they portrayed gravity and how her suitcases are, like, heavier now. I was like, how clever. I never would have considered that.
Yes,
Although,
talk about the cinematography.
I will in just a moment, but I will say it is kind of funny to me that of all the things that would most definitely go wrong bringing somebody back from space to Earth that quickly, because it was like, what, like 20-minute shuttle ride from the station Earth, and that's like the only thing that they were like, this would affect her. Gravity would be really hard for her.
Yes.
I just enjoyed the cinematography of how they tilted the camera or tilted the frame. I'm not sure what they did, if it was on set or in post, but to make it look even more arduous when she's walking up the bridge. So it goes like into the corner and she's kind of on an uphill incline. Because in reality, that bridge is pretty flat. But then they like tilted it to make it look like way more heavy and arduous, and they did some cool close-ups during that scene that I just thought were interesting. You don't see a lot of that kind of creative stuff in Disney movies these days.
It's true. I feel like maybe it's because this was such like an early on Disney Channel original movie, but I feel like the creative team just had such a fun time, like really just doing whatever they wanted. Like costumes, props, writing, the DP, the director of photography. Like I feel like everybody like kind of just did what they thought was cool without really thinking about like if it would like land with audiences, which it gratefully did. But I feel like sometimes, no shade to Disney, you know I love them, but I feel like sometimes Disney these days tries too hard to pander to audience reactions, which is good. It's a business move, right? But I feel like some of these older ones were just like people having fun making a movie, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so many times today, they're just trying to follow a formula that they know works. And that's fine some of the time. But when Disney has really hit its stride in the past has always been when they go totally out of the box, innovative, creative, like when they did Snow White, the whole Renaissance era, when they started getting into 3D animation, in this more modern era of films. Like anytime that they're like, we're going to do things different and break the mold, and maybe people won't like it, but we're going to give it a shot. That's when they've been the most successful. And so it's sad to me that so often they're like, we're just going to follow the formula because we know it works. And then you get bored. It gets dry after a couple years.
Right. Let's make Descendants 12, which no shade to Descendants. I love it. But like, you know what I'm talking about?
Excuse you. I love Descendants.
No, I know. But like, you know what I mean?
I hope they get up to 12.
I just want all of our listeners to know that as much as I love High School Musical, Gabriella loves Descendants.
Make Evie queen. She should have been the queen at the end of the third movie. It just kills me. We'll get to that. I do love Descendants. I recognize how cheesy it is. Like there is a reality that I'm
fully.
I should not love this as much as I do. I feel like High School Musical, you have an exception because there's nostalgia there. It was the first one and it like took the world by storm. Descendants, not quite the same effect. And I just got into it really late in life as a babysitter. And I was just like, where was this when I was a kid?
No, same. Like I watched Descendants. This is just turning into a Descendants podcast. I watched Descendants as an adult and I was like, this is delightful. This is so much fun.
And it's very creative and clever. And they went out of the box a bit. I mean, they kept some of their same old like nostalgia characters, but they totally went in a different direction with them. Like the fact that Belle and Beast are the most annoying couple in the whole thing. Hot take. Sorry.
All right, rewind. Back to Zenon. Come on, girl. The 21st century.
Yes. There was another line I wanted to mention when the guy says, no applause, just send money. I was like, nothing has changed since 2049.
Yep.
I can't even remember now what the context was, but I have it in my notes as like my favorite line in the whole film.
I also remember that line and I also don't know who says it. Might be Protozoa. I don't know.
I might have been the Andrew kid.
Oh, yeah.
Fixing everything.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was like, no applause, just send money.
Yes. He was so fun. Like
he is
I
a
really
really
do
fun
feel
character.
like each character had like, even like the mean girl, everyone had like their moment of like shining, whether that was humor or something heartfelt or something, which I appreciated.
Right. I kind of like that they never redeemed her because in today's day and age, everybody has to
Mm-hmm.
have a redeemable quality or a reason why they're evil. And she was just awful. And she just continued to be awful till the very end. And I kind of just like that they were like, straight shot, this is who she is right now for the purpose of this film.
I appreciated when like the spaceship took off and she was like, now you're never going to get to space. And then she like looked at the other people and she's like, what? I'm just stating a fact. She's like, I'm not trying to be mean.
Yeah, she's very practical. Her outfits were definitely the most 90s to me. Like the
Yes.
most obviously not futuristic at all.
Correct. Very correct.
So this is part of why I was confused and thought Zenon is from the future and like gets sent back to Earth. I didn't
Mhm.
realize she was in space when I used to watch the trailers. So this is part of why, because when you see her with the Earth kids, they made all this effort to make Zenon and her friends look so techie and futuristic and cool. And the Earth kids look like Earth kids of the 90s. So I was like, why didn't you make any efforts to make them look futuristic in an Earth way? You know?
I think they spent all
I
their
didn't get it.
budget on the 3 seconds of CGI.
Which was so bad. But for that time
So
and for
bad.
Disney, I'll give it to them.
Delightful.
Other funny line that I loved when they're on the bike ride and she says, "My butt's gonna be ready for the discard bin." I was like, they say funnier things in the 90s. They're more edgy with their jokes.
They totally did.
Not
I
like
do
Deadpool
love
edgy, but like, that's funny.
right. I feel like Xenon is so stubborn in like proving herself that she'll never say that she doesn't know how to do something. And as much as that's probably a negative trait, I relate so hard to that.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me
As a
more.
child and as an adult, unfortunately, sometimes I am Xenon. Do you know how to ride a bike?
Oh.
Of course I know how to ride a bike, and then falls over. Come to think of it, maybe I don't know how to ride a bike.
So something else that I want to discuss about the movie is I feel like this film, the main character of Xenon, is who I would typically think of as the sidekick character. And I actually feel like Raven's
Mm.
character Nebula is who, like in modern day movies, would be the main character. So I feel like in modern day films, Descendants being a perfect example, the main character is the level-headed one, the stoic one, possibly like the smart one, the one who's kind of like got it together, is a little bit like maybe like sarcastic somewhat. And that was definitely Nebula. Xenon is like quirky and interesting and funky and mischievous and colorful, and all of that typically screams sidekick character or best friend
Mhm.
character, like Harper in Wizards of Waverly Place. And I really loved that the 90s was like the reign of the quirky kid. They just let
Yeah.
them run wild, and I think those movies are so much fun for it. And I actually like really dislike main characters that are low energy. So I don't know, I feel like it just kind of flips the script on what it means to be like main character energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I didn't even think about that at all, but you were absolutely right. I feel like she like she drives the movie with her personality almost.
Definitely. She's larger than life and everything orbits around her. Like
Ha,
there's really
space
not
joke.
There was so many fun space jokes. We didn't even talk about yet the vernacular, the slang in this film was
Yes.
amazing. Both the
Mhm.
space slang and the 2049 Earth slang.
Yes. You're gonna go Nova, like supernova.
I was like, this is just like listening to Gen Z talk or Gen Alpha talk. I'm like, I don't know what any of this means.
Honestly, yes. Honestly, yes.
Just a little bit forced, but ultimately really fun.
Cetus-Lupeedus, I loved it.
I was like, that's where that comes from? I've heard that
Yes!
so much.
I said it on the last podcast and you were like, what are you talking about? You're making up words. So one of the discussion points I actually wanted to bring up was how like the theme of the whole movie is basically about like corporate greed and like
Yeah.
environmental responsibility, and like that's such an interesting choice for a theme in a children's movie.
Right. Especially in
And
the 90s, because I feel like that level of activism wasn't as prevalent at that time.
yeah, and they didn't go as hard as they could have, but like just talking about like oh, we grow all our own food on the spaceship, so we don't really eat meat. So things like that, and like the talk about the importance of protecting and sustaining the environment and all that. It's very progressive for 90s, which I kind of thought was really cool.
Yeah, I liked her lean towards like natural holistic health and the fact that they have so many things on the space shuttle to keep them healthy that they like don't even sneeze. You don't really hear much of that.
Yeah, but then Parker Wyndham and his plans to sabotage the space station for profit is just like a little bit like collect the insurance money is very interesting. And the fact that like the whole movie is about corporate greed and about how like some corporations, large corporations, don't think about the individual, think about how it will impact the smaller people versus how they can profit from it.
Absolutely. When Zenon asked the question, like, why would he invest all of his money just to, ruin it all? I was like, that is a profound question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's a question a lot of people are asking now about things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so many Disney villains are just ridiculous. Like their motivations are like evil for the sake of evil, or there's some kind of crazy mythical plot going on. But he's real. Like there are people in the world right now acting exactly like him. And that's pretty terrifying.
Right? It's wild. If we just could take a little bit of Xenon's spunk and stand up, the little man stand up to the big corporations.
Right? Well, and he's not even super evil by the end. Like he's not outright like, yeah, I'm doing the thing. He just continues to like fly under the radar and be like super nice and just manipulative. And the gaslighting, like how he gaslights Zenon the whole time.
Yes.
He's like one of the scariest villains we've seen.
Yeah, so far for sure.
Yeah.
Because we have Sharpay to compare to, and what's his name? Paolo. Who's just stupid. He's not even that evil. He's just stupid.
I guess I was thinking more broadly about like, of the Disney Channel movies I've seen, he's one of the most terrifying villains because he's one of the most realistic villains and one of the ones we're like currently dealing with in the world.
Yeah.
And just like his complete lack of empathy for his plan and what he's going to do, like you said, not caring about the individual, but even just like that's a massive program and project going on, and all of that research that I know nothing about is probably really important, and he just gives no cares. He's like, nope, all about me.
There has to be at least a couple thousand people up there, and he's going to essentially murder them all?
And children. So many children.
Wild. Dark.
Super dark. Yeah. It's actually way darker than I initially thought about. When you presented it, I was like, oh, dang. Oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
I especially hated Mr. Lutz. I feel like he was almost worse because he was slimy.
Yeah. No. And he should not be allowed around children ever.
No, definitely not. Yeah. No, he was creepy.
And then as far as environmentalism, I just feel like the future of space colonization, I think a lot of that will be like driven by environmentalism, I think there will be some
true, like running out of resources here.
Yeah. Very Wall-E,
Yeah.
And I think there will be some profit to gain, some people cough cough Elon Musk setting up like colonies on Mars or whatever, and doing it not necessarily for that reason, but I do think a big push for colonizing space, whether that's space station or other planets, like will be because of the need for environmentalism.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so much more awareness now than there used to be, but it's still not enough. Like we are just running out of resources so quickly.
Right. Not to be a downer, but like the Earth is dying, and like nothing we can do right now, unfortunately, can reverse that. So maybe by 2049, like this will be reality because we'll have to figure something out in the next, 20 something years.
Yeah. And it's a real shame because during the pandemic, as much as we hate to talk about that time, we saw an actual reversal of certain patterns in the environment, like with the aquatic life, and so many things were just thriving on the
quality.
Earth. Yeah, air quality, exactly. And it's a shame that we just went right back to normal. And I wish more people had like noticed like, hey, this is reversible. Yeah, it was incredibly drastic measures that were not sustainable to get that, but it just shows that like there could be a gradual progression back if we all wanted to work hard enough towards it. And some people are doing their part, which is great, obviously, but it's still not enough right now.
And it circles back to corporate greed, right? Because as much as every individual person, you know, should be doing their part, doing what you can, it comes down to what the big corporations are doing wrong that is really affecting us. It's fast fashion, it's emissions from factories, you know, it's the use of resources that we can't like sustain. And it's a bigger problem than the individual. So like as much as I do believe each person can do something, we need to hold the corporate people responsible for what they're doing to the earth. And you know what? They're going to be the same people who invest in space colonization, and they're going to continue to spur their own corporate greed by trying to disguise it as helping the planet.
I love how you brought together that it comes back to corporate greed, because it's like Zenon just totally understood that these two things go hand in hand, right? That it's all about money, right? People are just trying to make things that are cheap and low quality, and they're mass producing them, and they have so much influence. They could be influencing us to do things differently as a globe, but they're not, and it's just such a disappointment. So
I know. All right, Gabby, tell me what the world thought about this movie.
Okay, so I went on to Rotten Tomatoes, as we do. And shockingly, the tomato meter is not yet available for the critics.
What?
Yeah, there was no
one critiqued this movie?
No one. There were only 2 critics' reviews, which means that it was not enough to get a tomato meter.
I love that for some reason.
And
the
I will
critics
read
were like,
those 2
no,
critic
I
reviews.
refuse to watch this.
Yeah, there was only these 2. The first one, it's from Bridget Geerlings. She says, despite these high stakes, it's the film's fashion, quirky catchphrases, and original music that skyrocket this movie. So she felt positively about it. And then the only other critic review was Tracy Petherick, who says, tween sci-fi adventure has TV vibes, but plenty of positives. So
well, I'm glad they liked it.
The 2 critics loved it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cetus-Lupeedus.
Funny you should mention that. So on our audience side, there was a 62% audience score, or 3.6 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I pulled 3.
Yes.
They're not all positive. They are all unknown name. Nobody was actually brave enough to put their name for these. The first one's good. This ambitious film paved the way for out-of-the-box concept movies we would soon enjoy from Disney Channel. Zenon brings so much heart, fun, and determination on her journey to redemption that we couldn't help but cheer her on while seeing this fish-out-of-water character interacting with Earth. Very reminiscent of Thor's journey.
All right. Sure.
So I thought that was kind of cool. I liked her, call back to Thor. And that's kind of funny too, because that's what you were saying earlier. Like, it paved the way for these out-of-the-box concepts for Disney that they have now abandoned. So hopefully they go back to that. Now, this unknown person only left 1 star, and they just said, I watched it against my will.
That was probably my husband who wrote that one. No.
That's awesome. Oh, goodness.
He said, and I quote, that's a girl movie.
Heck yeah, it is. In the best way. And finally, our last unknown name audience member said, Cetus-Lupeedus, I'm dying to watch this again, but can't find it anywhere. And that was from 2012, so pre-Disney Plus. But people were searching for it.
Don't worry, anonymous reviewer, you will get Disney Plus soon.
Yeah, so ultimately, I think critics were neutral. They were lukewarm about it, and audience really enjoyed it for the most part.
I believe it. That's great.
So, Natalie, can you tell us, where are they now, all of these characters? Because I actually only knew one. I only knew Raven. So I want to know what's happening with the other ones.
Yeah, for sure. So we can start off with Zenon herself, Kirsten Storms. So this film was her breakout role, and we're going to see her face many more times in the course of this podcast because she reprised her role in the 2 other sequels to Zenon. She
Love it.
also voiced the character Bonnie in Kim Possible, the mean girl.
Oh, okay.
And she continued her acting career, became very well known for her roles on Days of Our Lives and on General Hospital.
Maybe she
In
knows
this,
Joey Tribbiani.
she probably does. Um, and this is so fun. So in General Hospital, she plays Maxie Jones. This is a role that she has been performing since 2005. She has been in over 1,600 episodes playing the same character in General Hospital. This woman is
No
clearly living
way.
her best life. Good for her.
Man, that's a long time to play one character.
I know. That is wild. That is over 20 years
That's
playing the same
20
character.
years, yeah.
That's
Dang, good for her.
wild. I know. Good for her. So she's
That's
still
fun.
doing pretty well.
Awesome.
Raven Simone, who played Zenon's best friend Nebula, she obviously continued to star in her own Disney Channel series That's So Raven, and in the DCOM franchise The Cheetah Girls, among many other things. We are very familiar with Raven. She also pursued a music career, and she's been a very vocal advocate for the LGBTQ rights. And she herself came out publicly in 2013, which is something that I did not know. She got married in 2020 to a woman. I had
She's
no idea.
married?
Yeah,
I didn't
good for
know
her.
that.
I know, right?
Oh
I
my
had no
goodness.
idea.
Okay, that's news to me. I mean, I knew she had came out at some point. I did not know she was married.
I know, wild. That's why we do this, because like I like knowing what these people are up to now. So
It's fun to catch up with them.
right.
Because, like,
Raven,
some of these people are, like, forever, perpetually in my mind, like, the age they were in my favorite Disney Channel original movie of theirs, you know? Like, there's some people, like, Zac Efron has grown because I've seen him in other things, and, like, he just did, Down to Earth. So good, by the way. But so, like, in my mind, he's his proper age. But, like, in my mind, Raven is still Cheetah Girl's age.
Right. Right. Yes. So Raven is still acting and I think producing and directing as far as I'm aware. So she's still doing pretty good. As for the rest of the supporting cast, though they are not as recognizable as Kirsten or Raven, they are all still working actors. Like I
Good
didn't
for
go
them.
point by point for everyone, but like we love to see it. Entertainment can be a really rough business and like I mean, I don't want to burst anyone's like fantasies of moving to Hollywood and making it big. But honestly, like so many people stop acting after only a few years or a few months sometimes. It's really hard. And so anytime I see an actor like pushing through, doing the work, I'm honestly like really proud. Like I don't even know them personally. I'm just really proud of them. So literally all of them are still doing pretty well and acting. And I love that.
That is so exciting. I'm happy for them. And you can say that too from your casting and acting experience. I feel like you have like a real heart for that.
Yeah. I mean, for a little like me moment to our listeners, I have an acting degree and so many of the people that I graduated with are no longer pursuing it. Like some people got the degree and never pursued it. Some people got the acting degree and then did a few years of work and it was hard and they gave up. And there's so few of us that are still doing it. And while I have no grandiose ideas that I'm a fantastic actor, I don't think like I am going to win any Oscars anytime soon. But I enjoy the process of it and I love auditioning and I love like actually putting in the work. And I think to be on my soapbox for a moment for all you aspiring actors out there, I feel like it's so important to fall in love with the process and understanding that your job won't be performing, your job will be auditioning, your job will be grinding and hustling and sacrificing and giving up a lot of things in order to have the opportunity to do something else. So anyway, that is my little rant on actors pursuing the dream. But if that's something that you really want to do, I know. If that's something that you, listener, really want to do with your life, I really want you to make sure that you are ready to be in it for the long haul and that you are ready to put in the work.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. I liked hearing your perspective.
Yeah.
I hope that it inspires several people out there who are trying to get into the business. It's a hard lesson to learn that your main job is auditioning, but it's crucial.
Well, on that very heavy note, and like our sermon, let's step down from our pulpit and let's pick what we're gonna watch next week.
All right, yes. So we are going to be selecting our movie for next week. Just as a reminder for any of you who are new here, we will be watching every single Disney Channel original movie on this podcast at some point, and that does include the ones that were released in theaters, even though they're not official Disney Channel original movies. We're watching those too.
There's only like 3 of them, so it's fine.
Yeah. And they count. And like our first episode was one of them. So it's all good. And so we're going to randomly select it. And that way you can watch it this week with us. And then when we come back next episode, we can all discuss it together and you'll be ready and caught up with your own thoughts. Natalie, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
All right, here we go. Spin.
Okay.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes. What is
I'm so happy. It is Cadet Kelly.
Ooh. Okay.
None other than Hilary Duff. I love her.
Yes.
She's another one, perpetually young.
Cadet Kelly,
so
yes.
So everybody watch it this week so that you're ready for the discussion next episode.
We will see you then.
Bye. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Once Upon a DCOM.
Like what you just heard? Leave us a rating and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at onceuponadcom.podcast and share this podcast with your Disney-loving friends.
A big thanks to Gabby for editing this whole podcast together.
Thanks, friend. And don't forget to subscribe because there's always a new episode on the way. This is Gabriella
and Natalie,
signing off with a sprinkle of pixie dust
and a whole lot of nostalgia.